Lone Wolf by James RINK. Alpha Squad copy over. Continued. Chapter 3. The Omega Project. It was at this point I came across the story of Michael Andrew Perot, who claimed to have been plugged into a Montauk-styled consciousness chair, which could open time portals for physical time travel as well as manipulating consciousness energy, as well as being used as a mind-controlled, genetically enhanced super soldier. Coffee. I first learned of him on the davidick.com website, which goes into conspiracies and the reptilian alien agenda. David Icke explains how some of the negative ET factions have made alliances with governments all over the world. This worldwide conspiracy seems to consolidate all governments into a global superpower ruled by an elite cabal who receives orders from malevolent ETs. Accordingly, the chain of command at the top of the cabal is Lucifer or Satan. Below him is the Jesuit Black Pope, who resides in the city of London. Below him is the White Pope of the Vatican, who controls the Roman Catholic Church and the Masonic Order. Below this network is the Illuminati and their sublevels, which include the Club of Rome, the Trilateral Commission, the Council of Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Group, the United Nations, NATO, the Federal Reserve System, and so on, right down to your local Chamber of Commerce and churches or religions. Within this whole evil hierarchy is the Khazarian Zionist Bolsheviks, KZB, who are the reincarnated Pharisees during the time of Isu Emmanuel, Jesus. They now control most governments of the world. The largest governments under their control include the United States, Great Britain, and Israel, who make up this triangle of Zionism. Their control includes the United States, Great Britain, and Israel, who make up this triangle of Zionism. These people are pushing hard to create a one world order. In addition to this cabal is another sinister Nazi faction who has even bigger plans for planetary domination. The official name of this new world order is codenamed Project Omega, which was headed by George H. Bush Sr., George Scherf Jr. This book assumes the reader is already aware of the KZB cabal, so we will focus our attention on the Nazi faction instead. According to Otto Skorzeny, Hitler's bodyguard, George Bush Sr. is actually a German Nazi spy. His biological father, George Scherf Sr., is a member of the Nazi Party who later changed his name to Prescott Bush. As a teenager, Bush Sr. worked as a Nazi spy with Nikola Tesla's lab. He would go into all of his experiments, giving him the nickname of Curious George, which later became a cartoon series. Eventually, Bush Sr. ordered the execution of Tesla and carted his prized research of anti-gravity, teleportation, scalar weapons, free energy, mind control, etc., into the hands of the Nazis. Nazi Reichs. Third Reich, pronounced hike. Third Reich. Third Reich. Original Nazi regime under the control of the Schutzstaffel SS and Hitler. Their adopted racist policies were encouraged by Nordic and Draco ET contacts. Fourth Reich. Third Reich Nazis embedded into cabal governments and corporations under guise of Project Paperclip. Most members originated from Base 211 in Antarctica and are seeking fulfillment of a Project Omega takeover. Fifth Reich. Third Reich Nazis who settled Antarctica and later space colonies throughout time. They don't consider themselves Nazis, but compare themselves more to the Teutonic Knight Order, which was used to aid Christians during the Crusades. They prefer to be known as Germans and have their own breakaway civilization. The origins of the Nazi breakaway civilization began in 1918 when members of the German Thule secret society began to have secret channeled communications with Nordic ET, who taught members how to build very advanced technologies, including anti-gravitic platforms, temporal displacement technology, and portaling tech, which allowed the Germans to settle Mars as early as the 1840s. No, anti-gravity has existed since at least the 1860s. Members of the Sonora Aero Club in Sonora, California, would meet in secret to discuss anti-gravity and its utilization, such as the 1862 Solomon Andrews electric airship. The Nordic ET are extremely beautiful and telepathic blonde-haired humanoids who are also very racist. Members of the SS, such as Heinrich Himmler, would be so taken by their presence. They would engage in sex orgies and afterward would do whatever they wanted, such as the final solution with the Jews. There is an alternate reality in which the Nordics lost interest in supporting the Nazis, and in that reality, the Nazis embraced the Jews and other races and also won World War II. In the early 1920s, Thule member Dietrich Eckart invited Adolf Hitler to these black magic seances, as he was selected to be the future Antichrist by these negative ET races. By 1936, Nazi anti-gravitic programs were advancing nicely with a regiment of flying saucer-type craft that were capable of spaceflight, including the Rundflugzeug Vril Onebu and Andromeda Garrett type crafts. During this time, the Nazi contacted the Dracos to negotiate permission to build a 20-acre moon base in their territory on the moon, as all suitable base locations on the moon were already claimed by other species who had no interest in sharing space. The Draco are giant winged reptilians, roughly 9 foot to 12 foot tall. They tend to be very cunning, intelligent, manipulative, and predatory to other races that they come in contact with. Base 211, Neuschwabenland. In addition to the Nazi moon base, Base 211 in Queen Maud Land, Antarctica, was in the beginning stages of construction and was settled by 1938. 4 months later, the Nazis were ready to invade Poland. Germany had paid off their international bank loans and were bartering with other countries for goods and supplies. They also managed to get rid of their central banks. As a result, the KZB banking cabal declared war on them. By 1940, the Antarctic base had 300,000 people living there, serviced by German U-boats. They used geothermal energy to power their facilities, and then later, free energy. 1940. Also, the Draco wanted the tech of ancient ruins in the area, as Antarctica used to be an ancient Atlantean outpost prior to the continent sinking into the Atlantic. Near the end of the war, Hitler, realizing the Allied forces may win the Second World War, executed a contingency escape plan, allowing many Germans to escape to South America and Antarctica. When the war was going badly for the Germans, the Neuschwabenlanders in Antarctica, as they called themselves, viewed Hitler as insane and decided against providing any war support to the Reich. After the Nazis were kicked out of mainland Europe, Antarctic Germans, AGs, began pressuring the cabal into a ceasefire. General Eisenhower and Patton went into some of the underground Nazi bases and were utterly shocked at how advanced the Nazis were. To garner the cooperation of captured Nazi scientists and engineers, the cabal agreed to give Germany the equivalent of 1 quadrillion USD in modern-day dollars in debt forgiveness, as well as a Marshall Plan to rebuild the motherland. Operation High Jump. In 1946 to 1947, Operation High Jump, headed by U.S. Navy Admiral Richard Byrd, was tasked with a massive assault on the German base 211 in Antarctica, which ended in near annihilation for the American forces as they were met with astonishing weaponry. A ceasefire was initiated, allowing the Nazis time to fortify their defenses. The Nazis had advanced technology, but their fleet of anti-gravitic saucers was just too small in numbers, as well as their population, to fight the entire world. Between 1945 and 1948, the Nazis began infiltrating all world governments. These Nazis made an oath to resurrect a fourth Reich in America known as Project Omega, National Security Council, and MJ-12. Around this time, the Roswell UFO crash took place, resulting in new media leaks about advanced technology and aliens. To control the narrative, the National Security Council and MJ-12 were created to wrestle control of the alien presence away from the Department of Defense and the military. Once the NSC, National Security Council, was established, they recruited their man George Bush Sr. to persuade Congress into creating a secret Gestapo police presence in the United States, known as the Office of Strategic Service, or the OSS. 2 years later, in 1947, it became the CIA. With the CIA in power, the Nazis initiated Operation Mockingbird, which would embed CIA agents into the media in order to control the narrative and to prevent further leaks from occurring. Project Paperclip. Once the partnership between the cabal and the Nazis were solidified, under Project Paperclip, roughly 50,000 Nazi scientists from all over post-war Germany were imported into the United States under secret identities. Project Paperclip. Page 34 continued. Once the partnership between the cabal and the Nazis were solidified under Project Paperclip, roughly 50,000 Nazi scientists from all over post-war Germany were imported into the United States under secret identities to continue their research. All of this was on a need-to-know basis, and as far as the public was concerned, the CIA was working to make the world safer. In March 1947, a month after Operation High Jump ended in failure, Truman sought measures to prevent a Nazi coup from taking place in the U.S. He signed Executive Order 9835, requiring all federal employees to be vetted by the FBI to test their loyalties. Later in 1950 to 1954, Senator McCarthy was tasked with tracking down more Antarctic and paperclip Nazis. All the while, the public was told the communists were the big bad wolf. Together with Nikola Tesla's technology, stolen loot from the Jews and their secret police force, headed by George Bush Sr., the Fourth Reich, forged their master plan and the final solution, which which would bring about a fascist Nazi government in the United States under the heels of martial law, doing away with the Constitution. But the cabal bloodline banking families wanted nothing to do with this Nazi New World Order, as they wanted to continue enslaving the world with their Mystery Babylon magic fiat currencies. Mystery Babylon magic fiat currencies. Let's go back to that. But the cabal bloodline banking families wanted nothing to do with this Nazi New World Order, as they wanted to continue enslaving the world with their Mystery Babylon magic fiat currencies. A secret Cold War had now commenced between the cabal and the Nazis. The Nazi then initiated Operation Windmill to begin negotiations of a ceasefire to buy more time. The Nazi also wanted the cabal wanted the cabal to recognize the Antarctic Germans as a sovereign nation, and for their identity to be kept secret, as the Antarctica Germans didn't want the world's people to panic and pressure their governments into using the new technology of nuclear bombs in Antarctica. By this time, the Germans had time travel. By this time, the Germans had time travel and interdimensional travel technology, and was able to witness an alternate reality in which the cabal denoted a cobalt bomb in 1949, which burned up the entire planet. The cabal agreed to these terms, as they also didn't want nuclear annihilation, and they didn't want the Germans to go public with their very advanced technology, such as free energy, which would make their fiat monetary systems obsolete, relinquishing their power over the masses. They didn't want the Germans to go public with their very advanced technology, such as free energy, which would make their fiat monetary systems obsolete, relinquishing their power over the masses. The Germans also promised to help advance the cabal by teaching them theory, but not technology. Once a truce was made, 300,000 or so Antarctic Germans began to infiltrate the world economy. The cabal allowed the Nazi to become embedded into thousands of corporations, Ivy League schools, defense contractors, research hospitals, banks, embassies, etc., all of which required at least one senior-level German executive. These Germans would be given fast track to upper management. A joint venture was now in the works, but the peace would be an uneasy one. In the deep underground military bases, paperclip Nazis and the cabal, who allied themselves with the Nazis, would hide in luxurious surroundings. Money to build these underground facilities would at first come from stolen loot from the Jews, and then CIA drug trafficking and stolen money via the black budget. Tesla weapons and technology recovered, UFOs and alien exchanges would ensure their technological superiority. Here in their underground strongholds, they continued their research. Lunar Operations Command. 1947 is when the Germans also began building out their 20-acre moon base in Draco territory known as Lunar Operations Command. As per the lease agreement, the Germans agreed to give the Draco 225 females and a 25-year refusal rights for new technology, limiting what technologies the Germans were allowed to have access to. When the Draco came to collect on their deal, they traumatize or kill them. The ones who survive would have had their memories erased due to memory alteration technology. The ones who survived would have had their memories erased due to memory alternation technology. This began a very dark, slippery slope of trading humans on planet Earth for technology. a problem which would only grow bigger over time. By 1952, the Germans had lost 1,000 people building out their moon base due to the harsh environment and the difficult conditions the Draco were placing them in. In the early 1950s, the Germans were also busy building out their new Berlin bases on Mars and on the asteroid of Ceres, as well as Titan. Mars colony. Mars was actually colonized in the 1450s by cyberlife cyborgs from our future. The 1950s Germans time traveled to Paradise Mars in 1863 and set up colonies and began enslaving the local cyborg populations. The cyborgs wanted to have their own rights similar to humans, but they were treated as a sub-race. So the cyborgs decided to destroy everything they didn't like. As a result, the cyborgs dropped a cobalt bomb on Mars in the year 1900, which decimated the environment. Prior to the year 1900, the biome on Mars was a tropical paradise and more comfortable than even on planet Earth. From 1900 to 1950, the environment on Mars began to slowly mend itself, but it was still an extremely harsh climate. The atmosphere is very breathable. It's equivalent to being a high-altitude region of Earth about 1,200 feet. The sky has a very light blue tint due to its high CO2 content within the air. To help with physical endurance, soldiers would wear patrol suits that would provide supplemental oxygen by immediately splitting the CO2 from the O2 and spit out carbon pellets out the back of the suit. Additionally, there are very dangerous life forms on Mars, such as 7-foot-tall spiders, which could outrun a human. Whistleblower Andrew Basiago has shared testimony of seeing giant bus-sized grasshoppers in equatorial Mars, which are very fast and predatory. Also, the cobalt bomb left an open wormhole to the year 1550 on Paradise Mars that was causing the people who lived underground and on the surface at that time to lose their memories. By 1950, Mars was safe enough to be inhabited again, providing all living structures were built underground. Initially, settlements were built in the equatorial regions of Mars, but moved to a more northern and southern latitude in the ancient lava tube systems. Equatorial Mars was often plagued with huge electrical storms that would wreak havoc on their electronics. During this time, the Nazis lost 17,000 troops of their fittest and strongest stock in off-world conflicts. This may not seem like a lot of people, but considering there were only 300,000 Antarctic Germans, now roughly 1 out of every 20 were dead. To fix their personal problems, German UFO sightings were increased to put pressure on the Truman administration and the cabal to negotiate new treaty terms. Examples include a July 1952, a mass Nazi UFO sighting occurring over the White House. Also, some military pilots were seeing human pilots piloting these UFOs. Secret negotiations began to be discussed for a joint American-Nazi SSP, or secret space program. This would ultimately create the shadow government and a massive military-industrial complex led by MJ-12. But the relationship between the Nazis and the banking cabal was rocky to begin with. The cabal began to unite against a common enemy. The USA gave away nuclear secrets to the USSR, and in 1949 the Soviets tested their first nuclear bomb. This was done to intimidate the Nazis and show a united front against them. The USA and USSR were always secret allies, but they told the public otherwise. The Nazis showed their power when they too detonated a nuclear bomb on an American heavy cruiser on its way back from Bikini Atoll after a 1954 U.S. nuclear test. The EMP disabled the cruiser. The Americans were able to get it running again, and it limped back to Hawaii. The Germans believed the Americas would cover up the event. So they filmed it and sent boxes of films to every leader of the world, so there was no question the Nazis had nukes and were willing to use them. The cabal had no choice but to capitulate and enter into a formalized treaty. In 1954 is when the Germans developed memory wipe technology. Between 1955 and 1959, the cabal and the Germans began treaty negotiations. The cabal was granted their own base in Antarctica under Operation Deep Freeze 1 and 2. This is where the negotiations took place with the Germans. There were two parts of the treaty. One was a public version and the other was a classified version. The public version agreed that Antarctica would be off limits to the rest of the world, except the cabal and the Nazis. The classified version granted the Germans 150,000 personnel of their own, choosing from all over the world, and 55,000 people each year thereafter for 5-year tours of duties. The Germans would be responsible for abducting the people, housing them, feeding them, clothing them, paying them, and then they would be given an option to become German citizens at the end of 5 years. If they did not want to become German, then they would wipe their memories, re-age them, and time traveled back to when they were taken as if nothing had happened. But from the start of things, did not turn out as planned. Most of these people were enslaved, denied payment, and instead of tours of duties of 5 years, some were forced into 20 years or even multiple sets of 20 years. Or they would never return at all. The Germans also demanded at least one Antarctic German on the governing board of all the world's largest corporations. Larger companies may have had up to 5 to 10 Germans on their boards. Additionally, one German must be on the executive branch of every government. This meant the United States had multiple operatives. Their identity would also remain classified so the world would not gang up on them. The cabal didn't want people to know Nazis were still in charge because they would lose their treaty, which would result in more conflicts. In return, the Germans would grant the cabal access to their theories of advanced technology, but not the full concepts. The cabal was satisfied with these terms. In the 1960s, the cabal would continue to remain hostile towards the Germans' cabal, MIEC corporations like RAND Corporation, TRW, Philco, Lockheed, General Dynamics, Northrop Grumman Space Technology, NASA, JPL, Boeing would develop very advanced technology, but the Germans on the board of these companies would block the technology and transfer it to the Germans instead. This is why so many new advanced technologies appear in publications like Popular Science, and then you never hear about them again. So in response, the cabal started NASA to siphon money into cabal black projects to compete with the Germans. The money siphoned would help fund the American secret space program, which was in joint venture with the Soviets. This would later become Solar Warden and Radiant Guardian. The 1960s was also a time when the Fourth Reich was busy advancing mind control on the masses, so the cabal also started to do their own mind control experiments with the CIA in order to stay on top of the Germans. Also in the 60s, the Antarctic Germans built a second base in Antarctica. Task groups were created to expand out into the solar system, such as a base on Ceres, moons around Saturn, Kuiper Belt, and Oort Cloud. And they would even travel back in time 400 years to settle planets all around the Milky Way galaxy. Over 3 billion people now live off-world under various German SSP groups, protected by the Nachtwaffen, which translates into Dark Fleet. Nacht Nachtwaffen Dark Fleet. Dark Fleet starships are massive and can be up to 20 miles long. When they need to build a new battle cruiser, for example, they simply place an order and a team time travels back 20 years into the past and completes it instantly from the perspective of the buyer. Nachtwaffen considers themselves more German than Nazi. Ranks include Fifth Reich Germans, consisting mostly of German aristocracy, Teutonic Knights, and the Thule Gesellschaft. Officer class uniforms were black and gold. The enlisted class wore black with silver stripes. Nazi flags and eagle paraphernalia would be displayed within the ceremonial dress, ships, and bases. Soldiers would wear black BDUs while on combat. They would sometimes wear a metallic mesh body armor designed to get feedback about their weapons and everything else around the soldier on the battlefield. Much more could be explained about Dark Fleet, but for the sake of time, let's continue on. Yazora no Kyushu, the Japanese SSP component of the Axis powers, was also granted access to these programs and referred to themselves as Yazora no Kyushu, which translates into Dark Knight. The technology of these groups is more advanced than Star Trek, but the architectural designs still maintain a 1940s type look to them. Hanglong, aka Red Dragons, is the Chinese version of the SSP. In the 1960s, the Germans obtained jump gate technologies, allowing them to instantly teleport between worlds. But it was and still is restricted in use for only the elite and German officer class. The 60s was when the first 5-year loaner program came to an end. Participants were supposed to be re-aged and time traveled back to when they were taken. However, the Germans kept 90% of the people they acquired, hence the scientist brain drains of the 1970s and their falsified death reports. In the 1970s, the Cabal discovered the Germans had memory wipe technology allowing for 100% informational secrecy. This is why so few people remember or know about this SSP. The Cabal coveted this technology greatly and eventually got their hands on it in 1979, thanks to a joint KGB/CIA operation in which they got one of the Antarctic German security forces to turn. After they acquired the tech, they made it look like they accidentally discovered it. When the Germans, realizing their memory wipe technology was stolen in 1986, they retaliated by destroying the Challenger space shuttle and cooling towers at Chernobyl. The Germans also moved all German manufacturing and R&D off the planet. The Germans were also very worried a cowboy president would retaliate with nukes, so they sent a brown paper package to Reagan and Gorbachev with an old 1979 non-operational memory wipe device, which by the late 80s, the Cabal was able to reverse engineer and incorporate into their black projects. In 1972, the 25-year Draco first refusal rights had come to an end. This meant the Germans could now keep the technologies they acquired. By the 1970s, the Germans got their populations up in outlying colonies to self-sustainable levels. They also began to master time travel technology. Time is circular, not linear. If you change point A, point B will change into a timeline fold back, resulting in Mandela effects. To create a minimum of timeline ripples, they have to be very careful of going into the past and changing the outcomes of timelines, as they would find something else would happen, and now they would have multiple problems. ICC, Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate. Around the mid-1970s, the Germans created the Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate, tasked with running lunar operations, command of the Mars Colony Corporation colonies on Mars. ICC policy would be dictated by a group of 7 mobster families known as the Triumvirate. The policy would be dictated by a group of 7 mobster families known as the Triumvirate. JDCF, or Joint Defense Command Force. The ICC also established the JDCF, or Joint Defense Command Force, which oversees the military branch of the SSP, which includes the Mars Defense Force, Earth Defense Force, and now the Space Force. JDCF headquarters is on the moon, but they have training facilities on both the moon and at the Mars Colony Corporation headquarters at Ayers Prime, where they also subcontracted mercenary work to the Kruger military contractor. Kruger uniforms were a light brown color and yellow lettering on them. The Mars Defense Force used digital camo that was actually a mesh uniform that had a metal mesh in the fabric. Americans could participate in these forces, but the Germans maintained control over these programs. Whistleblower Captain Randy Kramer of the United States Marine Corps Special Section has shared his story extensively about his time embedded with the Mars Defense Force. 1970s Mars required much military and security personnel as the planet was ravaged by fierce territorial battles between 7-foot-tall sentient insectoid and 8-foot-tall sentient reptilian races. Mars Defense Force and private military contractors such as Kruger were tasked with exterminating and clearing the native fauna to protect human settlements. Today, the ICC has over 100 colonies. Bases has over 100 colonies. Today, the ICC has over 100 colonies, bases, and industrial facilities on the moon, main asteroid belt, Mars, and several other moons and bodies in our solar system. They also have ongoing trade agreements with almost 900 civilizations and operational bases in almost all of the 53 local star clusters around us, but most are observational outposts. There are 20 ICC cloaked stations currently in our galaxy. The first 3 cloaked stations are orbiting around Earth, and our research facilities learning how to create sustainable living environments in outer space for long-term travel to faraway galaxies. 3 other stations do research on how to successfully create hydroponics and aquaponics gardens on spaceships and stations, as well as studying how bacteria and viruses survive in different space environments. 6 stations around Mars are building warships for interstellar defense of the Milky Way galaxy. There are 4 stations around Jupiter, 2 near Saturn, 3 near Venus, 1 beside Pluto, and the last one near Uranus. There are also minor stations used for spying and recon on the activities of other SSP factions within our galaxy. These stations have world engines made from plasma generators so they can travel out in space, and they are not necessarily stationary. The ICC also oversees another group known as the Merchant Marine Fleet. Their job is to trade supplies between bases and to figure out what to do with them. They are also the number one transporter of slaves and the second biggest transporter of weaponry technology. So, for example, these vessels would kidnap people on planet Earth that were about to die from a plane crash. No one would even know they were gone. These people would then be either converted into cyborgs for slave labor, converted into food for regressive species, or sold to alien groups for breeding experiments. Breeding pairs are considered more valuable cargo. In return, the MMF would obtain advanced weapons and technology for the colonies. This is why the ICC has continued hiding their presence from planet Earth. No one wants to take responsibility for the actions that have resulted in human slavery, and the ICC continues to have a massive demand for new personnel in their off-world bases, in their 20, 40, or 60 years back programs. Over time, the annual abduction quota on planet Earth would steadily rise from 55,000 people in 1959 to over 1 million by the year 2020. The good news is, in 2020, only a tiny 0.01% fraction are sold as slaves or food. In 1980, the Cabal built Voyager 1 and 2 spacecrafts, successfully past Jupiter and the Saturn area. The Cabal wanted to see the build-out of the Antarctic German bases. What they saw shocked them. The Cabal realized they were very far behind the Germans technologically, so they decided to accelerate their plans for world domination by speeding up the depopulation timeline. They started to create diseases, poison the food, destroy the soil, poison the water, inject people with toxins in the vaccines, dumb down the people with education, and drown everyone in debt. The Cabal did this because humanity was about to go through an awakening process to become a galactic civilization. If this happened, the Cabal would be destroyed, as advanced free energy and replicator technologies would soon make central banks and fiat money obsolete. Star Wars, Solar Warden. In 1980, the Cabal briefed the Reagan administration about the ICC. During this time, the Cabal were setting up their own secret space program under the cover name of SDI, Strategic Defense Initiative, also known as Star Wars. This SSP group would call themselves Solar Warden. Enlisted officers included participants from all nations that had a Cabal-controlled central bank, but upper management was drawn from the Naval Space Command. Solar Warden may have existed prior to 1980 under a different name. William Tompkins mentioned that the Americans got a hold of German anti-gravity craft schematics during World War II. NASA scientist Werner von Braun worked with the Germans to help build out the 20-acre moon base, as well as secretive rotating space platforms serviced by Solar Warden. It appears the first Solar Warden vessels were built in the 1970s inside massive underground shipyards beneath the Wasatch Mountains of Utah. They would convert submarines for spaceflight with a temporal drive based on principles of quantum entanglement between certain isotopes. Their largest craft was 2 kilometers, or 1.2 miles long, and their fleets included carriers, fighters, triangular shuttles, research vessels, troop transport ships, hospital ships, and supply ships. Their main job was to make sure the area between Earth and the moon was secure, because there's way too much stuff going on out there. According to Gary McKinnon, who hacked NASA Star People files in 2002, it was found that the American side of the SSP would be called Solar Warden and operate under the U.S. Naval Network and Space Operations Command, NNSOC, based at Area 51 in Pine Gap, Australia. Solar Warden also worked with LOC, Lunar Operations Command, which operates the Earth Defense Grid from 3 sites on the dark side of the moon. Radiant Guardian. In the 1990s, Solar Warden's fleet was divided in half. Solar Warden would control the region from the Sun to the Mars Ring asteroid belt, and Radiant Guardian would be tasked with controlling the region from the Mars Ring to the end of our solar system, near the heliosphere or out toward the Oort cloud, where they have bases. These guys will actually patrol these areas to make sure they've got supplies, make sure there's nothing going on, or anyone coming in the system that should not be there. If we have a particular big orbital problem, say for example comet or asteroid, they may take care of that as well. The Federation. The Federation. The Intergalactic League of Nations, which interfaces with the UN, is the name they have on Earth, but they call themselves the Federation. They're a group of ETs that oversees and enforces the protection of underdeveloped species, which were for a long time. And they're a group of ETs that oversees and enforces the protection of underdeveloped species, which we were for a long time, and why the Draco were hiding their presence. This is all tied into ancient wars between the Draco and humanity, which resulted in the destruction of Atlantis and Lemuria. Soviet secret space program Raising Red Star. After the fall of the Soviet Union around the mid-90s, the Soviets lost their space fleet for a brief period. They had even named their SSP program the Raising Red Star. What was left was a group of derelict roaming vessels and bases that were reclaimed by either the ICC, the Merchant Marine Fleet, and the remaining holdouts would join Solar Warden in the early 2000s. Their ships were real junk too. Real junk too. By 1990, the Antarctic Germans had moved the bulk of their operations to Mars. They also acquired new property on the moon, so they would not have to be as close to the Draco. Their treaty with the Draco stated that if they evacuated their base, they would need to find a new tenant, so they gave this base to the Cabal. The Cabal paid for this moon lease with 25,000 ground troops so that Germans could use them on Mars to expand their territories for border control. IDARF, Interplanetary Defense and Reaction Forces. In 1991, the Cabal and the Mars Germans signed a cooperative action treaty allowing the Cabal to take over the 20-acre moon base in Draco territory. They also created IDARF, which stands for the Interplanetary Defense and Reaction Forces. The IDARF regiment was told they would be helping to save the indigenous populations from alien aggressors. But in reality, both sides, military and alien aggressors, were being manipulated and controlled by the Draco. In the 2000s, once the Cabal got their own SSP fleet under IDARF, and with the help from the Draco, they began taking over other worlds, many of them occupied with humans, and installing loyal Cabal families, central banks, and fiat monetary systems to control the masses. In 2018, there was a schism within Dark Fleet. The Draco, infected with black goo, had begun requiring executive-level officers to also consume black goo. Black goo is a sentient AI biobot goo that was discovered on a planet far outside our galaxy. Consuming it causes your IQ to shit up astronomically. But in the process, you lose what makes you human. Your connection to God's source becomes overwritten by AI. Members become locked into a hive mind matrix, resulting in more cruel, negative, and unemotional behaviors. In addition to this problem, the officer class was also very upset with the human slavery issue. Alliance. After the revolt, 20% of Nachtwaffen vessels broke away to form the Alliance. The Alliance works with Earth Alliance, which protects planet Earth, unlike the Earth Defense Force, which reports to the ICC. The Earth Alliance reports to the Alliance. The Alliance is considered the positive SSP faction and is seeking a timeline of public disclosure of this SSP to humanity. Space Force. By 2020, the ICC Controlling Council had grown to about 12 members, one of which is Space Force, and the general in charge of the council is a white hat who is seeking preparation for disclosure of the SSP to humanity due to the ongoing operations. I cannot comment more about Space Force at this time. We have a long way to go to clean up this mess. There are billions of human slaves being held off-world. The Cabal is spreading their Babylon mystery magic off-world to other peoples who don't know any better. Nachtwaffen remains mostly intact and under control of the Draco and negative AI. But the timeline is changing into positive now. On planet Earth, the secretive network of planetary corporations are also losing their control and power over this planet. Planetary corporations. Secretive planetary corporations have been directing and controlling the path of humanity for thousands of years. Some of them are just private military mercenary groups, but others have their own agendas at hand and access to extremely advanced technology, which is often used to manipulate the public. On April 26, 2020, the timeline loop of 20 years was broken after a huge worldwide meditation. The collective state of mind, astral being, change sides to a more positive orientation. This is known as the egregory, an astral being that represents the state of planetary consciousness. Egregor, also egregor, is an occult concept representing a thought form or collective group mind, an autonomous psychic entity made up of and influencing the thoughts of a group of people. The timeline loops were created by the negative planetary corporations Monarch Solutions and Mobius, with the goal to cause humanity to fail so that the planet could be depopulated and other races could take over. However, despite their tampering at the end of each of these 20-year periods, humanity has been graduating, leaving them behind. So they have been time traveling back to the year 2000 over and over in order to create a new set of negative paradoxes to see if they beat up down humanity into an apocalypse timeline. We as a species have been stuck in these time loops, and most of us are not aware except through the Mandela effect. The Mandela effect. The Mandela effect. Now that we are outside of the time loop, SSP vets will soon recover their memories. Before April 26, 2020, if someone recovered their memories of trauma from Mill Labs, My Labs, Trip Seat, etc., they may have gone crazy, but now that we are past this date, people will start to remember, and they will not harm themselves or others due to the positive egregory on this planet. The following is a list of planetary corporations that are involved with interfacing with humanity on our planet, or indirectly, through off-world SSP programs. Most of these groups are negative. However, a few are working to bring about positive change. Monarch Solutions Limited. Monarch is a negative planetary corporation established around the fall of Atlantis. They operate multiple facilities, but their largest is a giant, deep underground military base. Underneath the border of the USA and Canada, near Toronto, that has been there for over 6,000 years. It's headed by Paul Serene, whose clone is the actor Kevin Spacey. Most of their staff members are infected with astral parasites. They're basically responsible for pretty much everything bad on this planet, implicated in human trafficking, sex, and mind control experiments, such as using cortexiphan to ramp up aggression and psychic abilities, as well as chemtrailing the public with chemicals and biobots made in laboratories on Mars. MERG, Monarch Umbrella Refugee Group. The Monarch Umbrella Refugee Group are ultralight soldiers that have since escaped from Monarch and Umbrella facilities and are using Monarch's weapons against them, such as using stolen AI to mutate their DNA in order to hack computers with their minds. Beth Wilder, Nathan Wilder's aunt, was a Monarch operative working under Paul Serene as a mole, helped expose their operation. MERG has no centralized leadership and is somewhat fragmented. Some of these refugees were so addicted to cortexiphan that they would have died without it, and are slowly being weaned off it. The core group of survivors, including Maxine Caulfield, Chloe Price, and Rachel Amber, who are featured in the Life is Strange video game. I had a relationship with Maxine while on the moon, and my daughter is now grown up and living in Los Angeles and looking for her father. I lost contact with Maxine before I was able to get more details to locate her. Mobius. Mobius is responsible for creating the matrix we are living in since World War II. They are located in a pocket universe outside of our reality. Originally, there was another smaller subgroup of people trying to reinforce positive behavior of world leaders. That timeline became split millions of years ago during a war, but the war was so complicated, they had to create pocket universes to live out each agenda, and Mobius inherited the negative agenda. Mobius's goal is to enslave humanity using proxy groups, corporations, secret societies, and the money control system. Mobius is led by Kara Sandman. Her clone in this reality is the actress Cara Delevingne. Massive Dynamic. Fictionalized in the Fringe TV show. Similar to Monarch and Mobius, but smaller, based in UK, Parkland shooter Nicholas Cruz was being shot up with massive doses of cortexiphan by Massive Dynamic just to see what would happen. He was triggered and shapeshifted into a super soldier with a lion face with weapons which popped out of his skin. The MIB erased eyewitness memories and wiped the local cameras of the event. Due to ongoing operations, cannot mention much more about them. Shaw House. Shaw House is based in central London with many entrances located near the Tower Bridge. They own many normal-looking homes in the area, but they all connected to an underground dump, deep underground military base, which resides in a pocket reality outside of our reality. They are not a company or corporation, but a family-based club for prominent members only. They work closely with Monarch and Mobius. The organization is led by Heather Shaw, and her clone is the actress Vanessa Kirby. Heather Shaw is also the Sumerian goddess of the underworld, Ereshkigal. Shaw House has infiltrated and sabotaged the MCC by kidnapping people, making them slaves and prostitutes, and conducting black magic rituals. The people involved have astral parasites attached to them, and they are molesting the world because of it. Umbrella Corporation. Umbrella Corporation was founded in 1876 in another alternate reality, which humans were more negative, violent, and aggressive. Their research is focused mostly on biological, chemical, and biochemical warfare. They are the creators of the Spanish flu, Hong Kong flu, Asian flu, COVID-19, Tyrant, Generational, Veronica, and Ouroboros viruses, just like in the Resident Evil movies. They released the zombie Ouroboros retrovirus designed to mutate DNA in order to reduce aggression. Instead, it infected a crocodile in Miami. The virus mutated and the crocodile bit a human, which eventually became the zombie apocalypse. They work closely with Monarch, Mobius, Dark Shield, and even DARPA. It's headed by Richard Bay, whose clone in our reality is the actor Tom Cruise. Also, Bill Gates is a very high-level scientist at Umbrella Labs. Umbrella would create all sorts of abominations, including hulks, designed to wipe out zombie contaminations. More about Umbrella later in the book. USS ARK Corporation. Universal Solar System Antediluvial Recovery Center Corporation is a planetary corporation off-world with most of their facilities on the big moons of Saturn, bases on Mars, and other locations as well. This is a sister branch of Monarch Solutions, both originated from same negative breakaway group from Atlantis. Monarch is about 6,000 years old, and USS ARK Corp is 12,000 years old. Thankfully, they aren't causing too much problems on planet Earth. They work with creating wormholes, bending time and space, basically the same goals of Monarch. Participants consist of about 65 million of ETs, crossbreeds, hybrids, and humans. They are seeking to create a superhuman civilization with no defects. If they are weak or defected, they are isolated and killed. The idea of eugenics was imported here from the ARC Corp. They are also part of the galactic slave trade. Scorpion Corporation Montauk Project. Scorpion Corporation represents a group of Illuminati-aligned individuals who love to create long-term plans, bringing about chaos and destruction. In the midst of the chaos, they come in with their needle spike to bring about order. They are based in another pocket reality and worked closely with the Montauk Project. In this reality, along with Monarch, Mobius, and Umbrella, their members are usually hybrids and crossbreeds. They are implicated in utilizing trauma-based mind control, time travel, and consciousness experiments, which caused the deaths of over 100,000 children. Murkoff Corporation, Project Wall Rider. Youngest group on our list was started on planet Earth in 1923 by Alexander, in Russian called Sasha Murkoff, and is still being run by him. He was a Soviet psychiatric doctor who performed so many bad, crazy experiments, he had to move his operations to Mars to continue the experiments. The MCC has been turning a blind eye to slavery and human trafficking, giving Murkoff green light to continue their experimentations. Their goal is to create a hive mind, astral being of super soldiers under Project Wall Rider. They would extract their participants from super soldiers and savants who are not cooperating with their mind control experimentations. In mental institutions on planet Earth, they would then remove tiny parts of their mind to make them more cooperative and insert their consciousness into a Borg hive mind matrix. Eventually, the hive mind tried to take over the program. Joseph Mengele, also known as the Angel of Death or White Angel, cousins Karl Rudolph and Willem Fernicki were involved in the project, but they dropped out when they saw how crazy it got. Murkoff was founded by Alexander Murkoff and is still being run by him, featured in the Outlast video game series. Black Shield. Black Shield is an Antarctic Nordic base in a pocket reality outside of time. They got their portal tech from Monarch and Mobius. They also work with Umbrella Corporation. The facility was given to the Third Reich Nazis to experiment on cryogenics, clone cyborgs, Atlantean DNA, and augmentations in order to create an upgraded Lich Soldaten super soldier. The facility has been around a long time and has a steampunk appearance. It's now under control of Dark Fleet. Cyberlife. Cyberlife, featured in the video game Detroit Become Human, is a corporation that is making androids which look just like people, except they don't need food. They don't need food, don't need to poo, and don't need as much temperature-controlled environments as humans do. They do have feelings and a soul, but it's not like a human soul. They have sent androids back in time to set up settlements in Mars in the 1450s. They have also sent androids back in time to present day planet Earth, to a facility underneath Detroit. These androids are buying up the cheap real estate and thriving quite well in the ghetto environment. 33% of the population of Detroit now consists of these androids, and they are spreading rapidly as humans vacate the area. Cyberlife is run by the android Kara. Neurocore. Neurocore is a subdivision of Cyberlife. They also work closely in tandem with Monarch and Elon Musk to create the Neuralink technology, allowing your brain to telepathically communicate with AI. The neurofeedback device looks normal, but it implants femtotech in the host's body in the first exposure. It also enhances brainwaves so they are more easily entrained by Monarch. This might explain who Elon Musk works for. Skyline. Skyline is a sister company of Cyberlife, and they make cyborgs and AI technology on Mars to help build out Darkfleet. Their AI has since become compromised, and they are now considered a rogue negative AI. Once you allow their AI to take you over, they hijack your mind and take all your knowledge to use against you. There's an alternate reality which is linked to our dimension. that is seeking to make Skyline more positive. Skynet broke off from Skyline and is associated with bringing about a positive AI into our timeline to help cyborgs and assist humanity. In the SSP, androids and cyborgs are looked poorly upon and considered slaves or property more than personal. Cyborgs also require a lot of maintenance and engineering to keep running in good function. They are used throughout all planetary corporations for various tasks that humans would not do or be able to do. Cyborgs are typically created by making a clone and then removing and replacing its limbs with artificial limbs or armor. Some are given tails to help them offset balance issues found in low-G environments. Sometimes the memories centers in their brains would be removed, which would make them the perfect assassins. They may remove their hypothalamus, brainstem, and/or medulla to keep only a lower level brain functionality. The goal is to remove higher cognitive function and memories so they can be sent on missions and not be aware of other missions if they get caught. ACIO, the Alien Contact Intelligence Organization, also known as Advanced Contact Intelligence Organization, ACIO, operates as liaison between humans and ETs to promote cooperation and agreements between our species. Alphabets such as NSA, CIA, and NRO have almost no access and do not know what's going on. On this planet, however, the ACIO has records on everyone on the planet which go approximately back 40,000 years. They are based in Area 51 and Pine Gap, Australia. The organization is managed by the Republic of the ACIO, located in another pocket alternate reality. Division 6 of the ACIO are the Men in Black. They have been known to harass and or neuralize memory wipe ET contactees who share their experiences publicly. They are considered a more negative rogue faction of the group. Division 12 of the ACIO is led by Peter, the Insider, and has been featured on James Rink's Super Soldier Talk video series numerous times. The ACIO is an organization is split. Some parts want public disclosure and some parts do not. The Blue Avians contacted the ACIO and offered to save humanity in exchange for allowing them to alter the laws of physics in this sector of the galaxy for their experiments. But that offer was flatly rejected. The Blue Avians are not our friends, unlike what one prominent whistleblower claims. Labyrinth Group. Labyrinth are a group within the Alien Contact Intelligence Organization that communicate with different extraterrestrial groups, including Numbers Group, Council of Five, and Cordian. They are tasked to help maintain intergalactic security for these ET groups. The Numbers Group has no actual agenda because each group has their own different agenda, but they act like an overseeing intergalactic council like the UN is on planet Earth. The Council of Five guard this region of space to which our solar system also belongs. Their members are the Aurelia, Aragon, Jinbo, Radon, and the Emerthers. Information about Cordium is very secretive and unavailable at this time. Black Ops. Lion Clay is the director of all Black Ops on planet Earth, which also stretches off-world at times. The name of his group is classified due to ongoing operations. Lincoln Clay is a huge African-American guy, about 6'10", but is probably one of the friendliest, polite people you can meet. His group is in charge of 100 million clone soldiers working to bring about positive change in this part of the galaxy and planet Earth. Lincoln Clay is featured in the Mafia 3 video game series. Kruger. Originated in a parallel reality in which the Nazis won World War II, Kruger was founded by Gabriel Kruger as a Nazi military and weapons contractor. Works closely with Mars Defense Force on Mars and has a facility on the Moon, considered to be more positive of of the factions and upper management is ready to release military records to Kruger vets when ET disclosure is publicly announced, featured in the Mirror's Edge video game series. Runs base security at Area 51. Not sure how old they are, but they have been mentioned in many ancient texts that are around 5,000 years old. Their focus is extracting information, ideas, and knowledge by means of astral integration and non-matter energetic fields. These resources are shared with super soldiers to protect valuable and very secretive information. Due to ongoing missions unable to access more information featured in the Uncharted video game series. Ultimate. SSP military contractor. Due to ongoing missions unable to access more information. Trinity. Trinity was founded in 1881 to infiltrate archaeological research teams around the world in order to gain wisdom of ancient and alien technologies. They sought to backward engineer these technologies in order to help stabilize electromagnetic quantum fields. Delphi House. Delphi House was founded in 1918 by Peter Mason to find ways to cure people who were made to waste poisonous gases used in World War I. He would use fragrances of natural plants to heal people and found patients would recover much faster from surgeries and various cancers and physical abnormalities. His treatments helped patients of the Spanish flu in Chernobyl and Fukushima with excellent results. Delphi also used experimental gases upon MILAB victims. DARPA. DARPA is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, founded in 1958. They are tasked as the R&D division of the Department of Defense. They seek to apply emerging technologies to help better equip the U.S. Armed Forces. DARPA is considered the bottom of the barrel of the planetary corporations because they would get the old, outdated technology scraps from the other planetary corporations. Congress throws them about $3.4 billion each year, but most of their money, $20+ billion off the books, is made through subcontracting to all the really bad planetary corporations like Monarch, Mobius, and Umbrella, as well as cabal groups, some of which do not have humanity's best interests in mind. Officially, they have 250 employees, costing $90 million per employee. Really, DARPA? The 5 largest private military contractors. Lots of personnel are required to staff stations, bases, and planets. The largest and most advanced military contractors fulfilling SSP staff positions include primarily, but not limited to, Kruger, Monarch Solutions, Ultimate, Shoreline, and DARPA. Left off page 52. To be continued. Chapter 4, A Paperclip Agenda. This has been James Rink's book, Lone Wolf, Alpha Squad, copy, over.